Okay, America finding its way on ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidell. This is the 11 o'clock block. And today on America finding its way, we're going to talk about Yogi Berra. Deja vu all over again. It's like Ground Hogs Day again and again and again. Today with Cynthia Sinclair and Winston Welch, our regular subscribers here. So let me start with you, Winston. Okay. Did you catch any significant part of Joe Biden's State of the Union speech yesterday, and what is your reaction to it?
I watched part of the sort of analysis on CNN, and I was surprised sort of that two of the commentators have sort of taken I don't want to say Trumpian viewpoint, but they're definitely taking the conservative viewpoint, which they wouldn't have had like 3 months ago. So I think they're trying to fill in that thing for the the worried middle-aged suburban house people from Iowa. But
They have rights too. They have rights
yeah,
too.
that said, I think that what they talked about, I mean, the first thing that struck me was how presidential this man was, how elegant, how refined, how thoughtful, how statesmanlike he was. He looks like the president. He acts like the president. He is the president, and he has assumed that role. He is our nation's leader. He is the nation of the free world again. We had lost that for a while, and he has enacted so many changes to help us regain our sense of self and our place in the world, and doing what's right. It's not to say that he won't stumble or have some mistakes or things that we won't agree with all the time, but essentially, when you look at it, like he said, when he inherited America 100 days ago, it was on fire. And I think that is a completely accurate description. On fire with bulldozers coming. So he has managed to completely. I think when you look at the poll numbers right after of the people who were watching, and granted, probably more of them were Biden supporters than not, they left the speech feeling positive about the nation, like it was on the right path, like it's going down the right thing. And I think even just general polls say that he is, he's at 55% approval, which for in this day and age, that's something. That means that more than half of the people are approving for him, and the work that he's been doing. So we're not going back to the olden days of FDR and where he had both houses of the Congress and the Senate and the House, and and then the mass of people behind him. Joe Biden's dealing with a different reality, but I think that the agenda that he laid out, um, while he is, and I have to credit him, he's got a stutter and he has a literal speech impediment. So for him to be able to get up there and still go through with that and explain his ideas very elegantly, calmly. He is looking at reshaping our society in a fundamental way, like FDR or LBJ, right? Lyndon Baines Johnson, right? So
Mhm.
he's looking at an expansion of the role of government. He thinks there's an appetite for the American citizen for this that maybe didn't exist even 2 years ago or pre-COVID, but they realize there is an indispensable place for government. It can function well. It is not what Ronald Reagan said. What was his phrase where he says, "Oh, we're from the government. We're here to help you." That's changed now. He's changed it to say, "We're from the government. We're here to help you," and but meaning it very sincerely. And I think he's enacted some really popular policies with people that have resonated with that and said, "You know what? We do want more. We want better schools. We want better roads. We want better healthcare. We want a functioning government. We want it all." And he's sensing that, and he's riding that horse pretty well. So I say I gave him an A on when I from the snippets, and the snippets were basically the entire speech when you watched it for a couple of hours. So, but I was really impressed just having a president again that we can admire and respect, whether you agree with him or not. He is an elegant statesman who is the president now. So I was
How about
he
you,
an
Cynthia?
ambitious thing.
How do you feel about this speech? Do you agree? Do you agree with Winston?
I do agree with Winston in the sense of Democrats really want a bigger government. I think that's one of the drawbacks for the Republicans. And I think that going too big might keep them at arm's length. And from what I heard anyway, you know, the stuff coming back on, I watched Fox News for a little while. When
I'm sorry for you.
Thank you, it was really painful. It really was. Because usually I only watch it till I hear the first lie, then I stop. That's usually within 5 minutes or less. So this time I pushed past that and I listened to all of the lies. Oh man, there were a lot of them. And I watched pretty much all of the Tim Scott GOP response. America is not racist. We're not racist.
Yeah, you didn't need a separate fact checker on what he said. So much of it was untrue.
So many subtle lies. And that was the part that bothered me the most. You know, granted, you know, you get it, you understand they got a lot of nerve though saying it's that Biden is dividing the country. I thought projection. It's like,
Yeah, that's what it is. It's incredible that they would blame him for that when they refused. You know, Winston, I noticed while I was watching this that when Joe Biden made a statement that was, you know, praiseworthy, there would be applause from behind him, you know, where Kamala Harris was sitting and Nancy Pelosi was sitting. And, you know, on the Democrat side of the House, there'd be applause, a fair amount, actually, and adulation in many ways. But none of the Republicans stood up on anything. And what I found interesting was Ted Cruz. He's really special. And, you know, Ted Cruz, the one who went to Mexico, that one. Ted Cruz like fell asleep in the middle, like this was of no consequence to him. And it leads to the question of whether, you know, even though it was a speech that was right on, although he's not great at rhetoric, you know, he's not going to get your blood boiling. He said the right things, and he did give us confidence, maybe that we hadn't, you know, really grabbed before, as you said. But the question is it going to have an effect? That's the question I kept thinking of during the speech. What do you think?
Is it going to have an effect? He's already had an effect. He's just his approval ratings at this point.
The speech
was, you know what I really appreciated about Joe Biden, and he spent his entire life in that room, so he knows it well. As far as the people jumping up on the other side of the aisle and applauding him, those days are gone. Even if it's the best thing since sliced bread, it's not going to happen, and that's sad. It's a sad indictment of our nation when we can't support the president on ending childhood hunger.
It's a great irony that he gets up there. He talks about conciliation, working together. You know, I mean, he made that point 1,000 times, and yet he's facing a Congress that is completely divided, and they don't agree with him about anything.
That is true, but you know, I think that actually he was sincere in that. He said to them, these are my ideas. I would like this agenda. But if you have better ideas, if you have different ideas, I want to hear what those are. And I really mean that. And I thought, we haven't heard that in a long time. And I think he's actually sincere about it. Now, of course, he has his agenda and his platform that he wants. And it's more, I guess, progressive and you know, an expansion of government than I had expected to see from Joe Biden. But I think he's looking around the nation and saying, we got a lot of work to do. We got clean up on aisle 3, 4, 7, 12, 15 through 29. And he's saying the only way that we're going to be able to do this is through some serious rededication to our society and the way that we fund these things. You know, he was saying, what was he calling that? A blue collar blueprint for America. He was talking to the people that are working in coal and oil, the people that didn't graduate, that barely graduated from high school, and saying this future does not have to leave you out. It integrates you. You're the base of it as much as everybody else. He also appealed to people and said, if you're making more than $400,000 a year, which is probably most of the people watching this show or in your neighborhood, you're going to pay more tax, and the corporations are going to pay more tax too, and that's how we're going to fund this thing. And I think very few people would say if you're making more than $400,000 a year that's unfair. But specifically, he said that what was it, over 200 people or something like that in the nation had increased their wealth by $1 trillion collectively during this last year. And
1.5 trillion.
And that's billionaires. And you think, okay, how many hundreds of millions or billions of dollars do you need to feel secure? And is that right in an economy where you have staggering numbers of childhood poverty, of Social Security potentially going bust, of people who are still facing real need? And I think that his tone was hitting this on the head, and he is the man from Scranton, and just saying, look, I'm not here to take your guns or your Bibles. I'm here just to say we've been doing things a certain way. We've been trickling down since 1980, and it's not working. And so we're gonna look at a different model here and see if that's gonna help.
You have to give him credit. He understands. He really understands the country. He hasn't been locked into Congress all this time. He's been out there looking and feeling, and he has he has advisors who really help him understand. I just hope he can do something about it. Cynthia, I put my same question to you. Is this speech going to have an effect? And really, I mean to sort of migrate over to the basic title of the show, which is Deja Vu all over again. Is it like Ground Hogs Day? Because while Joe Biden is speaking to Congress and half of them are falling asleep, the question is, what is happening with Trump and the Republicans and all of these Republican legislatures around the country that seem to be so draconian and mean and nasty? Are they being affected?
Yeah, I was going to ask you to be specific when you say who are they being affected? Well, everybody's being affected, but everybody may be in a different way. Trump has said not much about the speech, but he sure did come out and say something about this whole thing with Rudy Giuliani, where he said, I don't know why they are doing this to him. This is a quote. He is such a great guy. He loves this country. I don't know what they could be looking for. It's so unfair, and it's a double standard. And then Michael Cohen on CNN this morning chimed in and said that he warned Rudy that he would be next to be thrown under the bus. And sure enough, here it is, But Biden was not aware. This is what I love about that whole little bit. Is Biden said, I did not know about it until that night when everybody else found out about it. He said, the DOJ is for the people. It is the people's lawyer, not the president's lawyer. Because I meant it when I said it. I am not going to be any part of that. It was politicized by the last president, and I will not do it. And I thought, oh, you go, buddy. I really like the sound of that, because that's where the corruption really went crazy and started to spread. Was once the DOJ was corrupted, that was it. It's one for his cabinet to be doing these corrupt things and getting caught and having to quit and all this other stuff. But once it hit, once Barr showed up on the scene, it changed the game. And so I'm really happy to see the law be the law now and keep it that way, not political, just the law. So,
okay, I mean, we do understand, and I think Joe Biden understands, and his cabinet, I don't know if they're all confirmed yet, but his cabinet understands, and certainly Ron Klain, I consider him a brilliant advisor, the chief of staff. But while all that happens, and thank goodness there were no altercations yesterday around that speech. Oh, but while that happens, we have these legislators Republican legislators who are voting, against voting. We have the fallout of the 2020 census that Trump screwed up by intimidating so many people. We have the recounts happening in Arizona and possibly other states. We have the legislatures who have passed bills, stopping protest and I guess exculpating people who drive their cars into protests. That's really back in the 12th century, and so on. I mean, I could talk about more. And the question is, does Biden's speech or his moves, the very popular things he's doing, doesn't that affect those people? Apparently not, because they keep on doing it. And Trump is trying, and maybe to some extent succeeding, in bringing the Republican Party back to him and becoming or reinstating himself as the leader. So what's the other side of the coin is what I'm asking.
Are you asking me or Winston?
You.
Oh, me. Oh boy. Okay. So I think that there isn't going to be any sort of a change with the Republicans for quite a long time. I think that Trump probably doesn't want to be president because it's way too much work. He wants the power without having to do any of the work. So I think what he would like to do is just to get other people that are his toadies put into those positions of power and all of that. I think McCarthy isn't going to come away for a long time. His first comment after this speech, it makes Bernie Sanders look like a conservative. Come on, this is crazy talk. And yet the Republicans might fall for that stuff because the Republicans are so on task for their messaging to be that all Democrats, including Biden and everybody else, are these crazy liberals that want to take your guns, like you said, take your guns and, want to close your churches and all of that. So, how can we change them? I don't know. But I know that I loved what Trevor Noah said about Ted Cruz sleeping through it. He says, it looks like Ted's eyes are hooked up to the same power grid as his state. The only way stuff is that I watch the comedy shows at night, right? And some of the stuff they say is so funny. Stephen Colbert did a thing about how jobs was such a big thing, for this whole entire speech was really about jobs. And so he did this whole thing where they, out of context, they took clips of every time he said jobs. And then they strung it all together. So it was just jobs, jobs, job, 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 job. Very funny. I recommend
it is funny, but in all humor, there's truth, sometimes tragedy. In fact, I would say more often than not, in all humor, there is tragedy. So, Winston, how is Trump doing? I mean, Cynthia is not sure that he's going to run in 2024, but he has said that he's considering that. There are people who want him to do that. He's ramping up to it for sure. And he's having a fair effect, although we don't see him on Twitter or so much on the front page or on the media, but he's having a fair effect. He's still out there. Do you think he's going to run? Do you think he has the following these days to run? Do you think his success in these odd initiatives that we see the Republicans do around the country is helping him or hurting him?
I don't even like you saying his name. We need to just forget about him. Honestly, he's done enough damage to the nation. It's infected enough quarters of all aspects of our lives that his legacy will live on through our grandchildren's years. At this point, though, I was saddened to see Kevin McCarthy go on with Chris Wallace, and Chris Wallace asked him point blank, did the president say it looks like the voters care more about this than you did, Kevin? When the House is being stormed, he said, did he say that? He says, well, look, the president said he'd respond to that, and says, yeah, he's responded 6 hours later with a tweet calling his people patriots. And Kevin McCarthy was just I mean, just the worst sycophant ever, that he's going down and doing this. And I'm not sure what he views his future as, or what compromise they have, or what's going on there. But it was sad and embarrassing for a man who should stand up, and all of these folks in Congress, they probably started out their careers as principled leaders, and to have go back on something like that so egregiously is it was just sad to see that. And I think, is he having an effect like that? Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't matter. As time goes by, really, that speech, you could see that, okay, if he's more, he makes Bernie look like conservative. I don't think so. But maybe what we saw in that speech is that he was addressing these concerns from the progressive wing of his party in a way designed not to alienate those that are moderate and left, by saying, I'm not raising your taxes. 90% of you will not get a tax raise on this, but you're going to get all these benefits. You're going to get a child care benefit that's going to help you keep your grandkids out of poverty. You're going to get expanded Medicare. You're going to get this and that and the other. And because at college, all of these things that people really want and they don't want to pay for. So he's figured out a way, this is how we're going to do it. But he was really speaking to one fellow that's the only one that really matters at this point, from West Virginia, and it's Joe Manchin. And if he can get Joe Manchin on board and say, hey, Joe, he's got to lay out some extra fat that can be cut off. So they're probably gonna cut at the child care credit, or the take care of the old folks credit, or something in there. They'll trim some things, but there's no doubt about it that he is proposing something that's a lot closer to really what Americans want. They're afraid of calling it socialism or whatever, but we have it in pieces around this country, depending on who you are, what access to power you have, what access to resources you have. But he's saying, we need this for everybody. This is human infrastructure that we're looking at, and it's going to help you, Joe Manchin, and everybody else in this nation, so that we can level up, we can compete as on the world stage, and we can also treat our citizens with dignity and respect that they deserve. So I think that he was he hit it on the head. I think that if he gets Joe Manchin on board, he realizes he has a extremely razor thin margin right now, that they very well may lose the House and Senate depending on what happens. As far as Donald Trump goes, I don't know. I don't care. He's lost some weight apparently, and I wish him well. And I hope he stays out of things. I don't know if I'm sure he probably has pretty long meetings with his lawyers all day long. If they're going after Rudy now, what if Rudy flips? What if, let's see what happens with William Barr's book. At the end of the day, nothing's going to happen to Donald Trump. And I think we should be very clear on that. And just sort of, and his followers believe he's still the president. So we're not really we don't need to.
Well, I feel from just talking with you guys, I feel a couple of reactions. Let me express them and see what Cynthia thinks about them. Number one, you've both said that he's reasonable, rational, and presidential. And indeed, that is true. But more than that, I think he is trying to find a way to dampen the crisis. As you said, Winston, we've been in crisis for the entire duration of Trump's presidency, and especially the last year. I mean, no rational person could deny that. And so here he is. He's like us. We look at options. We look at the problem. We try to pick the best options, and that's what he's doing. And it's not necessarily right or left. It's trying to save the country. That's what I get out of watching him and listening to you guys. The other thing is, something we all talked about before, is that when Trump is out of the public eye, his influence diminishes. He's not there anymore. It's not just that he's being prosecuted or Giuliani might flip, he's got an orange suit in his future. It's that he's not there. And the fellow with the bully pulpit, which deserves the bully pulpit, is there. And so I think that even though, remember, we're only 100 days out, I think if you continue this process this is my question, Cynthia. If you continue this process of talking, morality and doing the right thing and recognizing the crisis and trying to save the country for itself and the world, that's pretty noble. If you keep on saying that, there are certain people that won't agree with it, but a lot of people will come around. And I think Trump is going to lose his influence, not immediately, as you said, Winston, but over time, between now and voting time for 2022, I suggest to you that this could have an effect, and it may change things. It may take a few months, but what do you think, Cynthia?
I think we can hope and pray that it will appeal to the better selves of the Republicans that aren't Trumplicans, right? That aren't the ones that will be forever in his court. You got to always remember Nixon ended with a 36% rating or something like that. So, it's like we got to remember that some of them are never going to come around. But you got to think that this good sense, normal, good guy, good American talk is going to have an effect. So, I wanted to just really quick make a little bit of a thing that I saw. I did watch the whole thing, by the way. And I got to admit though, like Ted Cruz, I did doze off for a minute.
You were our representative, Cynthia.
Sorry. I came right back. I only missed a few moments. I rewound the tape and watched it, so I'm okay. But so what I want to point out is this is a thing that came out with Republican representative, and I might butcher her name, Maliotakis, maybe from New York. And she talked with Biden for quite a while afterwards. And when she was being interviewed, what she said was she was telling him to close the border and all the border stations, and then he would be able to pay for his plan. I thought was just ridiculous. And then I've got some quotes that I think are important because here, this is ThinkTech Hawaii. So these are what our Hawaii representatives have chimed in with afterwards. Ed Case, who is a Democrat from Hawaii, said that the deficit matters and it's not partisan. We are already borrowing $5 trillion from our grandchildren just to get out of COVID. So, it's real. We do have to face it. It is a legitimate concern, but it's not something that should shut the door on the plan completely. Representative Kai Kahele said that the president was clear. People should pay what they're supposed to pay, and the wealthy should contribute to the growth and success of the country as a whole. Mazie Hirono was president, but she hasn't released a statement yet today. In regards to what the Maliotakis lady said, Senator Mark Kelly from Arizona, a Democrat from Arizona, said that he shares the president's urgency to fix the broken immigration system. And what he didn't hear was a plan to address the immediate crisis at the border. Well, he kind of did. Maybe he missed it because he said that he's sending, Vice President Harris down to the Triangle to try and stop them before they come. And then today, his communications director said something that I think he should have put in that the speech last night. The number of kids in BP custody today, it was in BP custody, 5,000 per day in February and March. Now, today, there's under 1,000. So in under 50 hours, they get kids out of BP custody. So he did talk about that.
There's a lot of stats where Biden has, and he indicated, and his administration is telling us they're transparent about where he is succeeding.
Right.
And we know he's succeeding in large part in the vaccinations, although you have, and this is what I want to ask you about, Winston, you have lies. we still have a very robust crop of lies. The lies about Kamala Harris selling children's books at the border, the Tucker Carlson remark about how children are being abused by being required to wear masks by their parents, the Tim Scott lies, however gross or subtle, in his rebuttal yesterday. And I feel that a correction of this course, that a successful result, an outcome of the Biden administration in the next 100 days is going to depend in large part on how well the media and the public handle the lies, because the lies will continue. The lies were successful in the Trump administration, and to some extent, we're hearing more lies. Stop the steal, still there. So how do we deal with that? How dangerous a phenomenon is that, that the Republicans are feeding us and feeding people who are vulnerable these lies?
I think when they get a chicken in every pot and they get their check from the government every month for $300 per kid that lets them put them in childcare or buy food, they're going to probably tune in more to The Price is Right than they are to Fox News. So, and Senator Mazie Hirono did say 18 hours ago, just walked off the House floor, and I can't think of a single thing President Biden said tonight that I disagree with. What a relief. That was on her Facebook page. You know, the thing is that we got serious problems, Jay. If you're looking at these little barking, nipping, lying beasts, that just pay them no attention. You know, they're just mosquitoes. I think don't give them energy.
I don't pay attention to them. I'm worried about other people.
The masses some of them are still there, but you know what? Over time, they'll fatigue of that. They don't care. That's the worst you can do. Kamala Harris is selling children's. Do you think Kamala Harris has something better to do than sell children's books to imprisoned refugees at the border? I don't think so. Fox or whoever's selling that, people are going to fatigue of that. And then, frankly, The Price is Right is much more entertaining, and it always is happy. So if you need a dose of happiness, turn off Fox and go to CBS.
You heard it here on ThinkTech. I'm going to give you the last word, Cynthia. What would you like to leave people with on the notion of lies and misstatements of priorities and the like that we will continue to hear?
I think that Winston underestimates their power. There is a lot of power in a lie, especially when it's repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated. The more you hear something, the more you tend to believe it. So I think that people need to be wary of lies. I think they need to fact check. And I mean, not that we get many Republicans watching us, but if we do, please fact check everything you hear on Fox News and stop watching OAN. And is it Newsmax? Yes.
Yeah.
Watching those two shows because
you're absolutely right, Cynthia. It's very important what media you tune into. And at the same time, I want to add here as a closing thought that they should watch ThinkTech Hawaii. They should watch you, Cynthia Sinclair, Winston, Welch. They would be much better off. Thank you so much, you guys. I'll see you next week. Aloha.